Congratulations, and this is really something that is very heartwarming for a state like ours, for a city like Bhubaneswar to have this beautiful campus. An institution which clearly is a demonstration of great vision. You know, people like Dr. Patnaik could be in the Silicon Valley, he could have migrated to England, he could have gone to Stanford, he could have gone to National University of Singapore, Japan, anywhere. All the options are available. But he had this vision to create an institution where institutions like yours did not exist. And I think in life it is very important not just to be personally successful, but to understand that with every professional comes the responsibility of institution creation and institution building. India will be a truly great country the day we have great institutions. So my heartiest congratulations, and I thank Dr. Patnaik and thank all the Vice Chancellor, the staff, the students, all of you who are actually collectively building a great institution. I'm reminded today of a seminal book, very important book, called What Works, which was written by a journalist, celebrated journalist of Guardian newspaper. His name is Harish Macrae. Harish Macrae wrote this book on things that work despite everything not in favor of those things that work. So in that book, he takes the example of the Indian IT industry. When the Indian IT industry was born, there was nothing to suggest that India could be an IT superpower. But it worked. Okay. With roads in Bangalore which were potholes, electricity connections which were erratic, real estate not there, people not in place, with the government not understanding what is software, the industry simply came up and it worked. So similar in that book, he takes the example of the Dharavi slum. And on one hand, it's a slum, but on the other hand, it's a significant contributor to India's GDP. It's an economic powerhouse, so it works. So inside the Dharavi slum, you have flourishing business, you have children who dream, you have some semblance of health system, and it works. So much so that, the slums of Bombay were easier to manage during COVID than the rich people's homes in Bombay. Okay. The rich people are creating all the fuss. The Dharavi slum people, took it with great discipline. So it works. But this is not the story. The story is, in that book, there's a chapter on educational institutions. And he talks about what makes a great educational institution what it is. And he's taking the example of Harvard. But that's not the thing. The thing is, he came across a very interesting piece of information. He was looking at the 100 most admired educational institutions in the world. And he found that there's a commonality. The commonality is that all of them are 100 years old. Okay? All of them. If you look at the top 100 educational institutions in the world, all of them are more than 100 years old. And it's a very important message, and that message is, how long does it take to build an institution? So I would like to believe that today you are 16 and not 3. So 16 years is the time that has been taken to build the foundation. But for ASBM to be world class, it will take a long time. It may not take 100 years. But it's easy to build a hotel. It's easy to build, relatively easy compared to an educational institution, relatively easy to build a hospital. It's very easy to build an airport these days. In 18 months, you can build a world-class airport. An educational institution takes a long time to build. So the question is, what is it that is required to build a great educational institution? Many years back, I had the great opportunity to come across Professor Vijay Govindarajan. He is he's a celebrated management professor who teaches at the Tuck School in the US. Had several distinctions, and one of the distinctions was that he was the professor in residence at Crotonville, which is the in-house management school of General Electric. He was a professor in residence for innovation. GE is a company for hundreds of years. It has been known for not hundreds of years, but 100 years. It has been known as a company that is known for innovation. It's a company which is a hothouse of innovation. And he was actually the professor in charge, the professor in residence of innovation for a certain period of time. So Vijay Govindarajan and I once collaborated to look at some of the finest organizations, both for profit and not for profit, educational, industrial, manufacturing, services across the world, and to look at certain things that make them stand apart. And we said, what is this something that makes them truly stand apart? And we co-created a paper in which we spoke about the idea of infrastructure. So when you look at institution building, you look at institutions like yourselves, it's a good idea to look at it as infrastructure. And if you look at any infrastructure, there are 4 layers at which you have to build infrastructure over a long period of time. The lowest layer at which infrastructure is built is the physical infrastructure. So you need a physical infrastructure to build something like ASBM. You need a physical infrastructure for building an international airport, for a hospital. But beyond that physical infrastructure, you also in today's world require the digital infrastructure. There was a time when, 15 years back, 20 years back, we would not have talked about a digital infrastructure. But today you can't build a classroom without saying smart classroom, right? So the smartness comes from a digital infrastructure. You can't create a campus without first deciding what will be the bandwidth that must go into that campus. You first have to think about the Wi-Fi and the router and the firewall even before you have built a physical infrastructure. Today, if your library is not an e-library, then you are not going to make the mark. So if you look at the collaboration requirement among researchers, you need a knowledge management system, world-class knowledge management system. So you need physical infrastructure, but on top of that, you require the digital infrastructure. But if you just throw in a physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure, will you become ASBM? The answer is no. Because beyond these 2 layers is the intellectual infrastructure. But what we found interesting was, if you look at the greatest institutions across different disciplines, it's not just the physical, digital, and intellectual infrastructure, you also must have the emotional infrastructure. Let me explain that a little bit to you. Physical infrastructure is critical, without which you can't exist. So I drive down to Chandka, and unless this campus was there, I won't know what truly is the manifestation of ASBM. So physical infrastructure is very important. What it really gives you is what is called presence. Okay? You are there. The campus is there. It's present. So when your parents came here to see for the first time, they saw the presence. They said, oh, so this is not like any other campus. They walk into the gardens and see the well-maintained gardens. They see the different buildings. So physically, you are present. So what physical infrastructure gives you is presence. And today, physical and digital have to be intertwined. Okay? It gives you presence. People can't ignore you. But even as it gives you presence, it does not give you differentiation. You are management students, you are management teachers, so you would understand what I mean by differentiation. How are you different? It is the intellectual infrastructure that makes you different. So differentiation comes from the intellectual infrastructure that you have to build. So how is ASBM different from the Tom, Dick and Harry management institutions that are all over the country? They throw money, suddenly in the middle of a paddy field or a wheat field, a so-called university comes up, okay, and it's physically there. But will they become ASBM? No, they cannot become ASBM. They cannot become ASBM because it is very easy to build physical infrastructure. It's very difficult to build intellectual infrastructure. You require the minds that must come. You must get the capabilities that must come together to create the intellectual infrastructure. And the intellectual infrastructure is not just the quality of the teachers, not just the pedagogy, but it's also the methodology, the processes, the systems, the network. Now the interesting thing is, even if you have the intellectual infrastructure, you get the differentiation, but in today's world, extremely difficult to keep your differentiation for a long time. There was a time when if you built a company, you built an organization and created a certain positioning for itself. Okay, differentiation meaning, something like a positioning. You could defend and protect that positioning for a long period of time. So if FedEx is FedEx and UPS is UPS, FedEx and UPS could maintain their positioning for a long period of time. But in today's world, whether you are an individual or you are an institution, you cannot defend your position for a long time. What took 10 years is now going to take only 18 months. So, even as intellectual infrastructure gives you a different positioning, the world is really moving at a very fast pace today. And who you are, you may be any great, but somebody else will quickly overtake you, as simple as that. That's what I mean. So, intellectual infrastructure may give you positioning, but it falls short of what we call memorability. Institutions require memorability. Those 100 institutions that I talked about in the book What Works are about memorability. What the world today hankers for, needs, desires, craves is memorability. Are you worth remembering? Are you worth remembering as an individual? Are you worth remembering as an institution? Are you worth remembering as a country? So where does memorability come from? Memorability does not come from physical infrastructure or intellectual infrastructure. Memorability comes when you are able to build the emotional infrastructure. And we studied a lot of companies, we studied a lot of not-for-profit organizations, we studied companies in the US, companies in Europe, organizations in those continents and also in Far East. And we realized that organizations that are able to create the intellectual infrastructure typically excel in 8 things, and I want to share those 8 things with you. The first thing that they're really good at is to build what is called proximate leadership. Proximate leadership. The leaders are close by, they're proximate. You can touch and feel them. In many places, the leadership is remote. Let me explain this very simply to you. On television, you find many state heads. Okay? You see the face of now Putin is very much in circulation. So you see Putin's picture on the television. Does he come across as somebody close to you? Probably not. You look at the Chinese premier, doesn't come across somebody who feels close. But you think of Barack Obama, and suddenly people who have never met Barack Obama feel very close to him. So some leaders feel close. That means they feel proximate. One of the most important requirements for a leader is to create that proximation. Now, you go to big universities. Who's the chancellor? Who's the vice chancellor? Who's the head of the department? You don't know. But you come to ASBM, it's a small university. So leadership has proximation. Leadership can be touched and felt. You will run into your professors, you will run into your seniors, you will run into your warden, you will run into whoever matters in this university is at you can extend your hand and touch that person. Researchers will tell you when they go overseas and they hanker for going to University of California, San Diego or some such place, go to Oxford. They'll say, I have a cubicle which is next to the room of a Nobel laureate. That is proximate leadership. The beauty of campuses like yours internationally, if you go to US for example, a lot of parents and students, they do the campus tour and they exclude large campuses like the Stanfords and Harvards and Yales because they say, I want to grow up in a small campus. Why? Because I matter. Everybody will know me and I'll know everybody. So when you have that closeness to teachers, to scholars, to researchers, it builds a very different kind of an atmosphere. So great organizations, great institutions actually consciously create proximate leadership. So that's requirement number one. The second requirement is organizations need to look at themselves as what are called meme plexes. You have heard about multiplexes. Okay? Multiplex is a cinema hall where multiple movies get screened at the same time. So just like that, there is an idea called memeplex. But first I have to explain to you what's a meme, then you will understand what's a memeplex. In a biological sense, what makes you unique on this planet is your DNA. My DNA and your DNA are not the same DNA. Your DNA and somebody else's DNA is not the same DNA. It's your unique signature. But it's flowing through millions of years for you or me to be in this room together. Uninterrupted. So a certain strand of protein has not broken chain even once. If once that chain would have been broken, you and I won't be here. Can you imagine how magical that is? For millions of years, my parents and your parents and their parents and their parents, that chain has continued for millions of years. One breakage and you won't be here. How does it happen? It happens because the DNA has all the time perpetuated itself. The DNA has been replicating itself. Okay. And some DNAs which are strong and some DNAs which are not strong. The ones which are not strong, somewhere they will stop. What you need to congratulate yourself warmly today is that you have inherited a very strong DNA, which has actually survived millions of years. So the very simple thing to understand here is that a strong DNA alone will replicate itself. Now, what a DNA is in relation to the world of biology, its counterpart in the world of ideas is what is called a meme. It's a Greek word, not the internet meme I'm talking about. A meme is the DNA equivalent in an idea. If that meme is strong, then that idea will actually perpetuate itself. What is that? In very simple terms, India is an idea. What is India? What is a tricolor? Why are people willing to give their life for a piece of cloth with 3 colors on it? It's an idea, nothing more than an idea. So the idea of India The idea of the tricolor, the idea of the national anthem has actually got such a strong DNA, which is a strong meme, that meme has replicated itself. My mother and my father would stand up when the national anthem was sung, okay, in their lifetime. I did it. My children are doing it. Same thing with you. So the meme has actually impacted generations after generations after generation. If that meme is not strong at some point in time, it will cease. The United Soviet Socialist Republic is no longer there because that idea actually didn't have a strong enough DNA or a meme. So, those ideas which have a very strong meme, which is the DNA equivalent, they will perpetuate themselves. They will go viral. They will not only go viral today, but they will go viral over centuries. ASBM started as a meme and it is perpetuating itself. If it's really got strength and everybody works together, one day it will be 100 years old. So, an organization is a memeplex. Not just one meme, but many memes. If you look at ASBM as an organization, it's not just one idea. It's many people's ideas. Many ideas have come in. But there are 4 or 5 or 3 very strong ideas which constitute the consciousness called ASBM. And as long as those ideas are strong, ASBM will continue to be there. So that is why we say that an organization is a memeplex. The third thing that makes an emotional infrastructure strong is constant communication. Sounds very simple. But most of us, most of the time, are not communicating, we are transmitting. The difference between communication and transmission is what the television is doing all the time. Bombarding, blasting. But is it engaging? Probably not. Communication, on the other hand, is a two-way process. Okay, I'm speaking, some of you are nodding in the audience. Some of you are making eye contact with me. Silently you are returning the vibes to me. So we are communicating. But an organization to be emotionally strong has to continuously communicate. You don't communicate only when there's a need to communicate. The director's message typically you will find comes on once a year. Okay? But is the director communicating throughout the year? Are the students communicating? If you look at an organization is like a beehive. The bees don't simply live there. Okay? They're communicating all the time. There's a hum, there's a buzz. So there has to be constant communication. Can communication be a culture? Can communication be part of a system? Can communication be an organic expression of the institution? So there is transmission, but for true communication to happen, we need to understand how to engineer communication, how to design communication. Why is it that some organizations communicate much better than other organizations? How do some families communicate better than other families? How is it that some people communicate without communicating? So you refine your communication capability to a level where a time comes where you can communicate without communicating. The fourth thing that is required to build an emotional infrastructure is not just proximate leadership, strong memes, constant communication, but the fourth thing is what we call the presence of support networks. And an educational institution understands it much better than anybody else. Every teacher today, worth her name or his name, is networked. And in turn, is actually providing a network. You have scholastic networks. You have network of past students. You have network of alma maters. You have network of different clubs and different communities within the organization. The networks are very, very powerful. But some organizations will have vibrant networks and some organizations will never get it. They will not know how to build a network. What makes some organizations to build great networks? What makes some leaders to build great networks? The finest example of a network is obviously the internet. It's called the network of networks. But networks have rules. The moment you are a node in the internet, then you don't just suck from the internet. You have to contribute to the internet. The internet doesn't collapse because every node is sharing the load of the internet. That's why when you put one more device to the internet, actually the power of the internet is going up. So network rules apply. What are network rules? Member get member. So if I'm a member of the network, I call somebody and say, you should be part of this campus network that we have. So members get members. It's voluntary. The second thing is you get only when you give. The device that you are connecting to the internet is first giving itself to the internet and taking the load of the internet, and that's how you're sucking the resources of the internet. A network is like an ATM machine. Before you draw money, you have to deposit cash. Right? So, great organizations are built on several networks within the organization. So, ASBM is not just ASBM. ASBM should be able to count the number of networks that are there, which are functioning, which are strong, which are capable. Some networks will die, some networks will replace themselves. And networks are not top down. You know, the founder, president, or the vice chancellor cannot say that we should have so many networks. You may have the network, but what about the conversation in the network? So the richness of that network will happen when the individual nodes are empowered, they're powerful, they feel safe, and only then they communicate. Now, if you look at the greatest network, just as I gave you the example of the internet, the greatest network on the planet is the rainforest. The rainforest is a very complex ecosystem. It's the most vibrant ecosystem, and it's a network of networks because the microbe is connected to the insect is connected to the plant is connected to the flora, fauna, everybody is together, and they're continuously communicating with each other. Your body is one of the finest examples of a network because if you look at your body is host to countless parasites and countless microbes. Okay? And somebody told me that if all the microbes are taken out of the body and weighed, it will amount to about 3 kilograms for an adult. That's the number of life form that we are holding. And any neuroscientist will tell you today that if those microbes stop communicating with your brain through the vagus nerve, you will collapse. But they're regulating your blood pressure, they're regulating your state of mind, they're continuously sending signals to your brain, and so on and so forth. So a healthy body, when you focus on developing a healthy body, you're actually working on a network. So how does the institution look at itself as a rainforest? How does an institution look at itself as a vibrant organism where networks flourish? The next very important thing that sets organizations apart in terms of building emotional infrastructure is what we call learning from adversity. Okay. Great organizations learn from adversity. Great families learn from adversity. Families bond because of adversity. In this audience, you will have people who will remember their grandmother telling them that we came penniless when partition happened. And your, so-and-so great-grandfather actually started a tiny shop, and that is how we started our life all over again. Somebody will say, oh, my great-grandfather or great-grandmother came from a village further away from Budville in Keonjhar, and we didn't have electricity, we didn't have water, and they had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and in a famine or a great scourge that happened, half the family was wiped off, and we started life all over again. These stories are told as badges of honor. We don't look down upon adversities. We say, I'm a child of that adversity. But bring the same child to an institution or an organization, and no organization actually builds pride on adversity. Managers don't like to hear about adversity. You're not supposed to bring bad news to your bosses. But people come together only when there's adversity. People don't bond in good times. We bond in difficult times. So organizations have to build not adversity avoidance, but adversity resilience. The true capability to smile will happen only when there's adversity. I'll talk about 3 other things that set organizations apart in building great institutions through memorability by creating vibrant emotional infrastructure. The residual 3 things are vision, values, and extreme exclusivity. You have to have vision. You are 3 today, or maybe 16 today, but you have to have a vision of who you are when you are 25. The word vision comes from the Latin word videre, which is the ability to see. So do you have the ability to see yourself 10 years from now? Do you have a picture that comes in your mind of who you are 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 25 years from now? Vision is a very powerful thing, because if you can create a vision of a future, other people will come forward and they will form what is called a vision community. The leader then ceases to matter. If you create a vision community, people take charge, people take over. What did Gandhi do? Gandhi created a vision of a free India and built a vision community around it. And the poorest of the poor came and became part of that vision community, and throughout the greatest, most powerful empire, most powerful force on the earth without using violence. So as leaders, our job is to create vision. We must see what other people are not seeing. And once you create a vision, other people will come and live the world that will be created through that vision. So organizations that build a strong emotional infrastructure are organizations that have vision. Each one of you in this audience is a child of vision. I'll particularly talk about the girls. There was a time when girls didn't study MBA. But when you are a small girl, somebody in the family said, you should study MBA. What was the power of that statement? That statement created a vision for you, and now you are fulfilling that vision. So, if we look back in our own lives, there's a mother, there's a father, there's an elder brother, elder sister, uncle, a friend, a neighbor, a teacher. Somebody said, you are good at maths, you'll be really good at maths, study maths. Your whole life changes after that. Somebody says, you are really good at music, why are you wasting time studying MBA? Okay? Be a YouTuber. It's a vision. So organizations must have a vision of who they are. But vision alone is not important or not enough. You need values. Values are extremely important. These values are your heartbeat. They are your polar symmetry. If you don't have values, then you can never ever, whether you're an individual or an institution, you can never ever become memorable. You may be different. You might get the differentiation that I was talking about. You might have presence. You may be in your face for many people. But you'll never be memorable. The world does not really make individuals and institutions part of their memorability unless you exhibit values. Last but not the least is you have to have extreme exclusivity. Great institutions are built on the power of exclusivity. If it is easy to get into ASBM, it will be easy to get out of ASBM. If it is difficult to get into ASBM, it will be difficult to get out of ASBM. You look at a simple institution like marriage. It's a difficult thing to do actually. And hence it's difficult to get out of it. Well, relatively. But look at marriage. You know, most of you are unmarried, so may not be able to relate to it. Talk about marriage, talk about long-term alliance, whatever. If you want to be together with another person, there are several handicaps, there are several hurdles that you have to go over. Okay? You have to be accepted not just by that individual. You have to be accepted by the individual's friends. That's not enough. You'll have to be accepted by the family. That's why you say that, you don't marry a person, you marry into that family, whether or not the joint family is working out or not. And even as you get married into the family, you are welcomed, etc. It does not feel like family. So there are the nuances, there are those jealousies, there's those difficulties, people create issues and nuances and all kinds of things. And then what happens is an adversity comes your way. And suddenly the person in that family who was actually making life difficult for you sees that you have come and left everything and taken care of that person's baby. And after that everything changes. Okay? That day after the adversity it feels like family. So it is difficult to start a family. Even today it's difficult to start a family. It's easy to have a live together relationship. Okay? But to be a family is going to be a long time. It's going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of giving and taking. So families are the oldest institutions in the whole world. Fortune 500 companies have come only the other day. Countries have come only in the last 300, 400, 500 years. But family as an institution has continued non-stop, like the DNA transmission that I talked about. If the family as an institution would have broken down even once, you and me wouldn't be sitting in this room. How did that happen? The family survived as an institution because it retained its exclusivity. How? All of us belong to families. Durga Puja time is here. Durga Puja remaining constant. How my family celebrates it will be a little different from your family. How Christmas will be celebrated between two families, two Christian families, there will be some differences. Okay? The cookie that mother makes, my mother makes, will be different from your mother, and the recipe will be handed over from mother to son or mother to daughter or mother to daughter-in-law in a very different way. The sambar, if some of you are from South Indian families, the sambar in one family doesn't taste like the sambar in the other family. Okay? That is about exclusivity. And the families guard that jealously. Same is true of institutions. We have to build exclusivity. I was looking at your research journal and it looks very impressive. My research journal has to look very different from IIM Sambalpur's research journal. My campus festival has to look very different from the IIT campus festival. My competitions, my contests, my student bodies, my not just classroom interaction, but my white space interaction. What happens in the cafeteria? The way the communities interact. The way we give academic freedom. The way our students fight with our teachers. Fighting is very critical. That's how we grow. Some places will tell you to shut up and say, we'll rusticate you, we'll throw you out. Some places say, yeah, let's get it. Why are you fighting with me in the classroom? Let's go, let's continue the dialogue in the cafeteria. There must be exclusivity to that. I hope and I wish that in the years to come, ASBM will be an epitome of not just physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, intellectual infrastructure, but will be an epitome of emotional infrastructure. I wish you all the very best. Good luck.